Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Southern Fried Geekery Podcast. As always, I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
And I'm Craig Lance.
And we are back for a really special episode, a really exciting episode. We have got somebody on the line that is, he's written and he's drawn several of the comics that we have just thoroughly enjoyed on this show and off the show for years. He's somebody that we have gotten to know on the convention circuit. I think a couple of us own art from him.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm sitting here looking at 3 pieces of art hanging on my wall by him.
You just reach out and touch them, stroke them gently.
Yes.
So that's kind of what this episode is going to be all about. So without further ado, we're just going to let the man take the wheel and go.
Hey, this is Jeremy Haun, and I'm excited to be here.
Oh, we're so excited to have you, man. Thank you for jumping on with us. You have had an incredibly busy day.
Yeah.
We are recording this about 9 o'clock on Friday or Saturday night, and the last 2 days you have had kind of a digital comic convention. Tell folks a little bit about it.
Yeah, I had, with everything going on, I wanted to, for myself and for others, just have as much of that comic book convention feel as we could get. So I put on something called HaunCon, great fitting name, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah, but this is actually the second one. The first one I did was the week that that we would have had Emerald City Comic Con, which is just over a month ago now. And right as all of this was kind of really coming, really kicking off in a hard way. And then I don't know. I needed it. I needed to have the interaction. I needed to talk with friends. I needed to talk with all of you, and it was incredibly important to me. And so I wanted to do a second one, which is HaunCon 2: The Wrath of Haun, which
which is great as well.
I'm really good at terrible names. There's a communal feeling. There's a thing that happens with conventions. I met you all at a small show down in Arkansas. It's amazing. You run into people and you chat a bit. You draw something for them. They pick up a book. They try something out, and you don't ever realize exactly what kind of a mark that leaves on your life.
Right.
Sure.
I have been so lucky in my career to have meet fans that have become friends and people that I value, and I'm always happy to see good things happen to them, see things happen in their lives, and I needed that. I really needed that again. I not being able to, we were at C2E2 that kicked off the year, and then every other show that I was set for the season and for the year has now been either indefinitely postponed or canceled. And I always talk about that we are people of all the genders sitting in poorly lit studios for incredibly long hours.
Mm-hmm.
And we make things, and for a long time, early in your career, it feels like you're firing arrows out into the night. You don't know where they're going. You don't know what's happening. And then your career builds and you gain an audience. And while we have social media, and I love and respect the idea that we can all get on and say always very, very positive, kind things.
Don't fool us. We've been on Facebook before.
But we get on there and that's one thing. But then, that face to face, you see the people, you say hi, I was talking with Andy Parks last night about it, and
Mm-hmm.
The power of seeing a friend and hugging a friend. There's
Right.
there's something to that. There's I think that handshakes, we're a little terrified of the handshake now, but my God, now the elevated status of what it means to shake someone's hand.
Well,
Right.
I think you're hitting on it. Everybody thinks of, there's kind of some, I think, some misnomers about comic creators and comics fans about, the artist sitting alone in the dusty basement working, slaving away all day and never going outside, or the comic nerd doing quote unquote the same thing. But we're actually, as a community, we're incredibly social. I mean, I have no idea how many cons that you do a year, but it's got to be unrelenting. I mean, I see you going at least 1 week in a month, if not more than that, to different places. On top of putting out books after books and building relationships and being a husband and a father and all of these other things. So I mean, it's interesting, that aspect of it, almost gearing down for this. People don't think about how artists and writers, how this is affecting them. It's not necessarily an entire group of people who are used to being isolated. It's people who are used to having these vibrant artistic communities around them, and they're not getting that right now.
Well, and I think that you put in the long hours. You really do. You have to sit there at the table. You have to do the thing. That's part of the job. But then, and I know we're all varied. Like you have people that never desire to see another human being in their lives. But I think that there is a larger share of us that we need to talk. We need to see other people. We need to remember that that story that we told with that moment that we really cared about resonated with another human being.
Right.
So along the lines of this con, is there any thoughts of making it a non-virtual con when this is all over?
Man, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't know. I think that out of this, what I would prefer would be a rededication to the joy of conventions.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Or just to the community.
Just to the community. Yeah. I just, it's very easy to look at conventions and think about, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of work away from the table. So many things in our lives, Mitch Gerrits and I were talking about this earlier, but like everything that you say yes to means that you say no to 5 other things, right?
Yeah.
We're at a point in our careers where, if you're saying yes, I'm going to go to this convention, you're saying no to that, I'm going to go to a bunch of others. If you say I'm going to do a convention this week, it means that I literally am going to lose 5 days worth of work, and that's going to be torture and potentially ruin a schedule. And along the way, while you get used to that, you balance that, you do a good job, somewhere along the way, you forget the joy of the interaction. It becomes so much work.
Right.
And I don't know, kind of an aside that connects back is prior to this, I worked on The Beauty for the past 5 years of my life, The Realm for pretty much 3 years, The Red Mother for over a year now. I've worked on these things, and there have been ups and there have been downs. There have been, an incredible amount of work. But I think along the way, one of the things that really happened was I truly came very, very close to burnout. Not with creativity. I love the creativity. I love the interaction with fans. I love all of that. But with the business of comics, with the idea that in order to continue to make things at the level, that I'm promising you that I'm going to do, I'm sitting there 7 days a week, 12 hours a day at the desk, and that's beautiful, and that's a great thing. but it also means that I had to give up a lot of things. You know, we all have to give up, and I get that.
Right.
But like when your kid asks you to do something and you have to say, I'm sorry, you know, I can't do that. Or when, you know, you start doing that thing where, you know, it's like, well, next month I'll do this. It gets really hard.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of us right now are in a thing where we are being forced to reevaluate our worlds, but maybe we also get to reevaluate our world.
Well, so it's interesting that you bring that up because, and this kind of ties back into the conversations you were having today. I was checking in with you and Scotty Young, as y'all were having your conversation, and you know, Scotty has historically been a strong voice for, you know, 9 to 5 guys, like check out and go, and which, you know, on some level, Scotty can afford to do that because, you know, his name recognition and his, you know, bankroll is deep, and he has that kind of clout in the industry. But he's a big advocate for reminding writers and readers that, you know, you do have families at home, and check out and don't spend 14 hours at that desk. Take a break and go spend time and remember to be human. And like, as long as I've known the man, he's been a person who has kind of driven that home. I mean, how do you manage that?
To be honest with you, I don't know that I do, that I have. Right before C2, it's been a couple months ago, I was in Kansas City working on some stuff. And Scotty and I grabbed dinner, and we really talked about that, about his philosophy, about you do the job while you know, in a very set period of time, and then you put it down and you focus on the things that you want to focus on. You know, you don't work 7 days a week. You work 5 days a week really hard for 8 hours, and then you're done. You know, I romanticize that in my head, you know, and it's something that I want to do. But I have needed to, in order to protect my world and my co-creators on projects, and, you know, trying to make ends meet and do the hustle. At times, I've put those needs of mine way back on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we have to figure out what the next step is for that, how to be okay.
See, and I just don't think that the average comic reader has any idea how much work goes into getting a monthly comic book out to everybody.
Yeah, well, and I think people are learning as time goes by. I think that's been a positive side of social media interaction. You know, there aren't a lot of them, but, you know, that's one. You know, one of the things that recently that really became a big conversation, an important conversation, was, you know, especially as we've lost a few creators, physical and mental health.
Right.
And I think we're starting to talk a little bit more about that, and maybe even a little bit more openly. And there's people that want to bust on you for talking about the fact that, you know, you have chronic pain or whatever it is, you know. And I don't have time for that. If we need to be able to be honest with the fact that you know, having a bowling ball sized head on top of non-exercise shoulders and leaning it forward will lead to back and neck pain. You know, that's the truth.
Right.
We need to discuss these things. We need to understand that, like, the thing that you want, the thing that you love, comes from a human being,
right.
A series of human beings. And they make that thing, they make those things because they love them. They also love you. And they are putting themselves through a level of physical discomfort or mental discomfort in order to do it. We have back and neck pain. We have various ailments, human ailments, like you all do, you know.
Right.
We have anxiety and depression and stress. that happens. You know, we all have varying degrees of it. But you know, and we all still try. We all still try our damn best.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have a couple of friends that you know, there was a point where we were messaging back and forth on social media, and people were literally posting like photographs of their physical therapy equipment that they had to use regularly to keep themselves okay, you know, and you start looking at that and you're like, you know, this is the cost. And we've got to figure out how to take care of ourselves while still making these things. And that may be a situation where the industry might have to change a little bit, or how we approach these things might have to change so that we don't end up with a bunch of creative individuals that are left broken at the end of a very short career.
Well, no, I mean you compile that on top of the systemic issues of the fact that most, not all, I don't even know if most is the right way to put it, but a a fair amount of comic creators are work for hire. They're independent. They're not a member of a union. They don't have the benefits and the health care. A lot of it comes out of pocket. They're 1099 folks.
Well, yeah.
That when you know, when you deal with that kind of thing, things like healthcare or, you know, equipment and taking care of yourself gets put on the back burner for, you know, keeping the lights on and keeping your kids fed. A lot of times. And
Absolutely.
you know, I've done a little bit, not comic creation, but you know, I've done the 1090, and you know, Craig is a small business owner, a small, you know,
Yeah.
so he has to deal with that. And it's one of those things that just culturally, I think that conversation is especially true for comics, but it goes beyond comics. It's something that we've
Well,
got to do a better job of talking about.
anyone that's self-employed faces those same struggles, you know, on a daily basis. When do you walk out of your office? You know, I kept my phone on me 24 hours a day for a long time because I ran my business from my phone. And eventually I just had to learn to step aside and put it down. When the day's over, the day's over.
Yeah, that gig culture idea, right?
Mhm.
Like
Right.
that's what we are now. We're gig culture, and the inability to put it down, the inability to stop. You know, I mean, part of that's the devices that we have and the way that we
That's
live.
right. That's right.
I mean, there was a point where, you know, we were discussing that. My God, you know, we have Instagram accounts and Facebook accounts, and you know, if you post that you're taking a weekend off with your kids, going and giving, and then you get a little passive aggressive jab from an editor. Oh, I see that you're out doing this. You know, that can wreck you. You know, and that happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a little negative, but I think that I want to take it back to the thing that you were talking about there, though, about 1099, you know, work for hire employees. I get why it happens. We all understand the need for that and how that came to be.
Right.
But I do think that there is a very real thing, an incredibly important thing that we have to look at, where you realize that in order to make a living wage doing this thing, the average, you know, there are people that are making a lot more and they want to protect their stuff, and I get that, and they deserve it. You know, they work hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But you know, you know, I mean, and I'm going to sound like a big socialist here, and you can, you know, people can like that or not like that, but you know, the idea of a universal income or a universal comic wage is a pretty necessary thing right now, because if somebody is out there and they're willing to draw a page of a comic book for $100, that drives down prices. And
Right.
and you've got people having to write 6 books a month in order to feed their families.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people that are having to draw 12 books a month, and they're not wired for drawing 12 books a month, but they have to do that in order to make enough to cover, a living wage. And I know that, some people are going to be out there and they're going to be sitting there going, man, I'd write a comic book for free. I think we probably all have said that at one point. I'd write a book for free. I'd draw a book for free. I'd write it for $10. I don't care. I just want to get my name out there. And I get that. And I respect that. And I understand the sentiment that you might have. But when it comes to making things, we do deserve compensation, and we deserve comfort.
For sure. Anybody that does a living deserves to be paid. If you do a job, you deserve to be paid at the very least a minimum living wage for that job.
Yeah.
Well, if they're in the fans, it should be pretty obvious to a fan to want that for the artist, because that's where their best work is going to come out of. That's right.
Well, yeah, and I think part of that too comes on the industry itself. I think that we owe it, if we want to make sure, if I want to produce a book that is going to be on time, I need to have enough of that book, regardless of my speed as an artist or writer. I need to have enough of that book in the can to ensure that we're going to be okay for that series.
Yeah.
Now, that means that, if you're going to have, let's say 3 issues. If you're going to have 3 issues of a new creator-owned book, or whatever, mainstream, doesn't matter. 3 issues of a book in the can, from concept to script to finished colors for 3 issues, you're talking about a minimum of, I would say, 4 to 5 months for 3 issues. That same 3 issues could take upwards of 6, 7 months, depending on how much conceptual design work's being done, how much back and forth, how many notes, various things. The idea that someone should work on spec for 6 months is unconscionable. And yet this industry feels as if we should do it time and time again.
Well, and that's the model just keeps perpetuating. And, it's crazy to me. And I think that's been why things like Kickstarter books and crowdfunding in general has taken off in the past few years, to mitigate some of that and still let it. But you think of the image model, right? Like you come to the image model, and you know this way better than any of us do, but like you said, you want to come with stuff in the bag ready to go, because hopefully those first few issues will take off and they will afford you the ability to finish that art, to finish those books. And in an industry where people check out the first issue and then decide to trade weight or something like that, I think that's why so many good series don't get made, and why so many good artists don't get paid.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, it's sad, and kind of tying into a little bit of what we're talking about here. Over the past few weeks, we have seen an amazing, heartwarming turnout to help people who are struggling right now, especially in the comic industry, to pay their bills. Small shops, low level artists, and I say low level monetarily,
Right.
those indie creators. But it's sad that it takes a catastrophe or a global pandemic to bring that out and to realize for people. And I'm going to say a name just for status, but it's not any way bashing him. For the Jim Lees of the world, who can sell a commission for $10,000, for them to realize that, and Jim has done an amazing job getting things out there and getting money to people who need it right now. I'm just, again, putting that as like a monetary level, but for them to realize that this is kind of the status quo for a lot of people. The whole, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to work next month, I don't know if I can pay my bills, is for a lot of folks who are living, indie book to indie book and page to page, that's just life.
Right.
You know, and it's hard, and I do hope that we see the indie industry change to where people appreciate that more. Um, so I know a lot of our listeners are sitting at home and they're wanting us to talk to you about some of the books and stuff and kind of your career in comics.
Of course.
I'm fascinated by the industry talk. I could do this all night long, but I know we only have you for a limited time. So you you mentioned some of your books earlier, writing the beauty, you know, working with Thomas Natchlick on that, which I think is coming to an end pretty soon. And I mean, your work with the Realm, a lot of your creator-owned stuff, if it's fair to call it that, Red Mother has really taken off. Um, and a lot of that stuff you've kind of shifted from being the main artist to being the main writer. How's that shift treated you with your different books?
I mean, it's been interesting. It's been a process of reminding myself that that's what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, we all have self-doubt. We all, I think that, you know, you hear that stay in your lane thing a lot, you know, it's like, oh, you know, oh, art boy, you stay in your lane. Just keep drawing.
Art boy.
You're over there, art boy. You know, but I was very fortunate with, you know, I'd written stuff for years off and on, but then with the beauty, having a partner like Jason Hurley, where we could have conversations about things, and you know, having a friend like that you work with, that brings so much to the table on his own, but then be so generous as to consistently help reaffirm my own ideas and my creativity. You know, I think that in a lot of ways I am doing more of what I'm doing because of my work with Jason. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Hurley has a way of calling out my bullshit, you know, but also, you know, really bringing out the best in me. And after, you know, we are on issue 29, and literally there's about 40 pages left of this. If everything comes out the way we want it to, we will finish those last 40 pages in one issue. We'll end this series with issue 30. But 29 issues, man, that's a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
And, yeah. Did you just change my name on this Zoom call to Art Boy? You're a villain. That's beautiful. I love it.
Who is that? You, Caleb?
That's Caleb.
I'm not going to admit to anything until I have my counsel present.
Well, as law school boy, you're I love this. You know, but what that really did was push me into the next step, and it made me realize, you know, and I started having conversations with other friends about, you know, like my own career. I think my conversations with Scotty and with Jonathan Hickman, you know, where consistently I was like, you know, I was getting asked, what do you want to do next? Like, what do you want to be? Are you wanting to, you know, are you wanting to just draw, you know, monthly books? Are you wanting to write and draw your own stuff? Are you wanting to, you know, and the answer kept coming back, you know, I'm a storyteller. I want to work, but I want to work on my terms. I want to create stories that are very much mine. And, you know, out of it, Boom came in on the Red Mother, and they said, you know, Philip Sablick and Bryce and Matt over there, they came in and they said, you know, hey, we believe in you. We believe in the work that you do and what you can do. Carte blanche, we're just going to let you do it. Like, go.
Nice.
Very nice.
That feels amazing. You know, there's something to that.
Well, it reads amazing. Listeners to the show know we actually reviewed that book on our show for the first issue anyway, and all of us just kind of loved it across the board. Um, and I think you can see some of that. I think you can see where they just let you do your own thing, and it gives you the ability to create some type of nuance that you, especially in creator owned work, right? That you don't get in work that's not that you didn't plant those seeds in licensed work. With this, you can really see where you were able to break out, and you're telling all kinds. You're telling an amazing story, but it's got roots. Like, it branches out and it goes places. And I think that's across the board with your work. I mean, the beauty. Yes, it's a horror story, but it's also a story about narcissism. It's a story about the medical industry, if you want to go that route. It's very fashion oriented, which we don't see a lot of fashion comics these days. Which, I see that book and I think of people like Joelle Jones, and I put you right up, like, right next to that. The Realm, which is heavy D&D, but is also a story about family at the end of the day. Um, you know, Red Mother being also another horror story, but at the end of the day, there's so much social commentary, legitimately good social commentary that's being put into those books that it's you can really see that in your work, where you're able to tap into kind of this next level, because you don't have I don't know that you don't have somebody riding the brake. It doesn't feel like you have anybody riding the brake.
Well, again, it's that absolute. I'm absolutely fortunate in working with the people that I do. That, like, whether it's Hurley saying, "Nope, we've got to push this. We've got to, let's go. Let's take it to the next level," or Boom. I mean, the Red Mother. I don't know that the Red Mother would have happened anytime soon were it not for Bryce and Philip over at Boom sitting down with me, and Philip had been asking me to hey, come over here, do a book with us. He had been asking me to do a book for 5 years. When we worked together at Top Cow, it was such a fantastic experience. That actually led to the Beauty. But we sat down. I visited the offices in LA, and we were eating cookies at this great little cookie shop down the corner. Down around the corner from the shop from Boom Studios, and Philip, we were sitting there, and it's like, hey, give us your pitches. So I think I gave him 3 pitches, and they were things that I felt really good about. But I had this one, and it was about this lady that loses her eye and begins to see this being that is coming for her and sees her back. And it was a story about loss and about strength beyond those things. And I was just like, I'm not going to be able to pitch this. Nobody's going to understand what the hell I'm even talking about or what I'm trying to get at. And I pitched it to them, and they were both just like, huh. And I got this email later saying, "We can't stop thinking about the Red Mother." And, if they hadn't seen that, if they hadn't seen that story that's there, I don't know that I would have been able to do it anytime soon. And I've been fortunate like that in my career. I'm eternally grateful.
Did you have to make time for that book, or did you have that creative time already lined up for something?
Buddy, I have to make time for everything.
Yeah.
To a degree, yeah. I was in a little bit of a transitional phase because I knew that we were coming to the end of the Beauty.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I knew that I was there's a thing with comics a lot of times. James Tynion and I were talking about it yesterday, where there's the way that there's a product that you see that hits the shelves, and then there is the process that leads up to that. So, like, if I'm drawing a 6-issue miniseries for DC, I know that by issue 3 of that, I need to probably start putting feelers out for the next gig. If I'm writing The Beauty, I know that I've got one more arc left, and I need to have that next series underway by that last arc, so that the second that The Beauty ends, I can move into this thing. And it takes a lot of planning. It's a lot of kind of puzzle pieces that you almost have to solve in order to make sure that you have consistent work coming out and that you feel relevant. And if you do it really well, you look like Rick Remender. Or, nobody wants to look like Rick Remender, but you seem like where you've planned it out long game, and suddenly in the same year you have 3 creator-owned titles dropping all at once, or 2 creator-owned titles and a really solid Marvel book, and suddenly it's like, wow, I keep hearing this guy's name. I think that Donny Cates did that pretty masterfully. He worked really hard to put together, God Country, and then had all of these things kind of falling into place where you had a solid book in God Country, and then he was able to parlay that into everything else that came after it. You got to do a little planning.
Yeah. Well, and I think Cates in particular is kind of methodical in that way. Like that man knows, like, he's got a game plan, and I think you have to, right? Like with a lot of things. But I mean, like watching, there's 2 people that I'll always be shocked when I don't see a book on the shelf that's got their name on it, and that's you and Cullen Bunn. It's one of those things, like I always expect there to be a Jeremy Haun book, and I always expect there to be a Cullen Bunn book from somewhere, because you guys are always, like, you've got irons in the fire, and you always have something cooking. And I'm curious, how have you noticed that is, from your perspective at least, that's harder one way or the other from either the writer's chair or the artist's chair? Is that easier to balance or harder to balance now that you're the one who's putting the scripts out there for folks to work with, as opposed to waiting on the scripts to come in?
I think it depends a lot on the partners, both the companies that you're working with and the creators that you're working with.
Yeah.
I wish that I had more hours in the day to make everything line up kind of the way that I want it to. And there's, I can't quite commit to what some of this stuff actually is, but I'm going to kind of give you an example about what I'm working on right now, or what I've been working on for the past 6 months.
I mean, just so you know, if you want to break like major news on our Little Bitty podcast, we're okay with that.
Yeah. No, I'm going to drop some stuff. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to start getting phone calls. Do you know how the cycle of information needs to be working? No. We know that I've been working on the Red Mother.
Mm-hmm.
We know that that we hit the pause button a little bit on the Realm, so that I could work on a couple of things that I needed to take care of. But we're planning on more of the Realm. We have 1 issue left of The Beauty, and we are on issue 4 of 12 of the Red Mother. I should have this next Wednesday, maybe.
They all blend together anymore.
Yeah, I don't even know anymore, have had Final Witness from Valiant hit the stands.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have another creator-owned book that the company and the name shall remain rather nameless at the moment. That's going to be out, and Chris Mitten's drawing that project.
Nice.
You can drop us a DM later to let us know.
Yeah, I'll
That
tell you all about it. I'm going to do that, and I feel like I'm saying this right now, and I would literally get an email from the publisher. I felt you talking about the project.
Hey, trust me, I understand how those contracts work, so I get it.
But and so I am writing issue 3 of that. Chris is drawing issue 2 of that right now. It's going to be 5 issues. And then I have 2 other things that I have started steadily writing on. And then, of course, then pandemic and everything changes. And
right.
What the hell?
Right.
But so you see that's a lot of things that are spread out over, I basically write about an issue a week. If I sit down from about, I get a lot. Most of my work's done from about 1 in the afternoon until about 5 in the evening, Monday through Thursday, sometimes Monday through Friday. But basically, I can write about an issue a week doing that. And so, I have my realm time. Sorry, my Red Mother time. I have my Chris Mitten super secret time. Sounds like a date, doesn't it? My special Chris Mitten time. And then the slots for the other things. And I've been trying to get ahead on the 2 main projects right now, the ones that are actually fully in the works. But you really have to put a lot of balance to that, and especially when you're drawing a book where you need to have, whether it takes you 6 weeks to draw a book or however long that takes. It makes for a lot of long hours and balancing the whole thing.
So I'm curious with that, and I hate to keep going back to the main thing that kind of is controlling our lives right now, but has the isolation and the staying at home with COVID been a benefit or a detriment to that? Because and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with folks not realizing exactly what comics writers and comics artists, editors, everybody in the industry does. Has being isolated or having to stay home, do you find yourself writing more, or because your family's kind of at home more now, are you writing less? Or are you finding more time to make those amazing cocktails that you're always making online, and how's that working for you?
Well, I mean, one of the things about staying home with COVID is that COVID's a gentle lover. I think that every creator that I've talked to lately, and you can see it across social media, you can see it everywhere. We consistently amaze ourselves with the times where we are able to be somewhat creative, and then kind of taken aback by those moments that seem to happen where you're like, I'm going to get up today and I'm going to, draw I'm going to pencil and ink an entire page. I'm going to write 5 pages a day. And then you sit there and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's been incredibly up and down. It's no secret now. And I don't think that, nobody's trying to hide it, but one of the first companies that kind of did the pencils down thing was Valiant.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was killing myself trying to, get more pages done. We were working hard. I got back from C2 because I had C2E2 and we were right in the middle of con season and things were about to ready to get crazy. I was a little bit behind, and, we got the call, and I went from running as fast as I could, as hard as I could, to an utter standstill. And that's, we're looking at June before we're going to get back to work on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that hit hard. They care. Valiant cares. Heather Antos, my editor there, she is an amazing editor and truly, truly cares about the projects and about her staff. But, still, we had to hit the pause button. We had to protect the larger scope.
Right.
And so I went from being a guy that was spending, those 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day at the art table drawing, to suddenly being somebody without an art job that I had to do or could do. And so for the first time in my career, I was no longer an artist who also wrote. I became a full-time writer who occasionally did a little art here and there, and had had a backlog of commissions to catch up on. So that's what my job was, and I'm glad I'm able to do that. That part is very important, being able to catch up on stuff. But still, your day-to-day job stops. You got some stuff to figure out.
Right.
So, I kind of found myself in a place where I wanted to write more and needed to write more, and I wanted to be able to draw as much as possible also. But, you're sitting there and your 10-year-old asks you to, hang out with him for a little bit, play a video game. You decide that maybe it would be really good if you put in, you installed that fire pit you've always talked about putting in the backyard. You decide you're going to teach your kids, how to build a proper Boy Scout, approved fire,
Which brings me to a very, very important, serious question here. How is your Dungeons and Dragons game going with the kids, with the family? And what edition are you playing?
So we're playing 5th edition.
Nice.
Okay.
And my 15-year-old son is the DM on this. And he's rocking it.
Nice.
He's well, at first we decided that we were going to play a module together. We were like, let's just do, let's do something kind of small, contained. And so we got the module and started talking about it and kind of how we were going to approach it. And he's like, yeah, I got this. And then, he went to his room and probably play video games or something like that. Like 2 days later, he's like, hey, I've got everything kind of ready to go. Let's work up some characters. I took the gist of what this is about, but I wrote my own thing. It's going to be pretty big. Do you guys mind if it takes, 4 to 6 months of at least weekly playing? Then I was like trying to figure out like exactly how cool I could try to seem while wanting to jump up and down for joy.
I mean, yeah. I don't have kids myself, but uncle and got a lot of friends who have made the babies, and I know they would commit sins and crimes if they could get their kid to say, hey, I want to hang out with you once a week for months. So I think you're doing pretty good on that end.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. It really has. And I think that's one of the things about, we all have things that we have to deal with and process with this, whether you're an individual living alone, or whether you're living with your partner, or whether you're living with a full, kids and the whole 9 yards. God, I don't even know how people are living with just roommates. But you all are powerful. trust me. We're all dealing with a lot, and you're watching the people around you process things in different ways. When all this started, my 15-year-old Ethan had just started seeing a girl, and he'd had a couple of girlfriends this year. He's a handsome God. He's a good-looking kid. He's 6'1" and blonde haired, just charming. And so this is started happening. He's starting to kind of get a little bit of attention.
Wait, Ethan's 6'1" now?
Yeah.
Like I remember seeing him, I remember seeing him. I think it was C2E2 2 years ago, and like he was a kid. How did he get to 6'1"?
Yeah, no. The past, last year, really. He had already kind of gotten a little tall. He started getting tall, but yeah, he's taller than I am now, and
that's crazy.
He like this year he like leaned out. He's a big boy now. But it was this interesting thing because suddenly he was had somebody that he was interested in, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, when you get back from Chicago, kind of got this girl I want to take out on a date. Would it be okay if you took us to the theater and let us, go watch a movie together?" This was right before C2E2, so he didn't get to go on the date with the
poor kid.
Yeah, so so he's trying to adjust to that. This whole thing about it's a weird time too for kids. Friends not being
for sure.
together. And anyway,
graduations being canceled and proms and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I will say that this has probably really cut down on any kind of accidental pregnancies in situations. but
we'll know in December.
Yeah.
So on the topic, since we're talking about things like the Realm and playing D&D with your son, I kind of got the feeling as I was reading the Realm that it was almost a project you wrote for your son. Am I missing the mark on that, or did he play it just seemed to me as I was reading it that he played a big role in the making of that book?
Yeah, I think that I wanted something that we could share with, that we could share in. And whenever I was, we started working on this when he was about 12.
Mm-hmm.
And, whenever I was 12 years old, I was sitting in my buddy Chris's basement playing the red box D&D, with that gorgeous Larry Elmore art that I swiped for the Realm hardcover. Watching the Road Warrior over and over and over again. And I wanted to capture a little bit of that, and I wanted something that I could kind of share with Ethan. And books grow and they change and everything like that. But I based the look of one of the boy on him, and he's in the book and he's part of the story, and it was also one of the first things I think where he really understood the magnitude of what I did. That I was telling these big stories. That we were doing these things, and when Seth and I created the series, we really talked a lot about ourselves at that age, and wanting to capture it and kind of do something special with it.
That's going to be like the coolest. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
I was going to say that's got to be like one of the coolest dad flexes that you can have.
Yeah, The only thing about that I wish, and I think it's turning around, because I think, he's now in Cartoonist Club and a few things, and he's a dungeon master, but like, neither of my boys, like, while they always appreciated it, neither of my boys were like rockin' comic nerds. They loved everything around it. They love conventions. They love pop culture. They love all these things. But like neither of them were ever like, Dad, remember when you drew Batwoman? And they weren't like that. They never really,
Right.
they never really did that. And that's fine. You got to be your own person. And I think part of it too is I never, they both had their subscription pull list from day one at the shop, books that they got that they have long boxes of comics themselves, but I never said, hey, you have to read this. Hey, you have to be this thing.
Right.
And, it creates a weird thing, because it's like, you want your kids to be that. You want them to be that. But it does take a while for them to catch on to the massive flexes of
Well,
That's amazing.
I mean, look, there are so many of us that wish we had grown up with dads that drew Batwoman, and we're rocking the Valiant universe, which that's a cool thing in and of itself, right? Like this, I know you, as far as your work for hire stuff goes, or your big two stuff. I know you've done a lot of work for DC, but at least from my own reading, most of what I know is from your creator-owned stuff. But Valiant is like your stuff for Valiant. It's and I say this not having actually gotten to read it yet, but just from knowing what Valiant is, it's this kind of small pocket universe that has all the charming aspects of the big two, but it's not diluted over 50 to 70 titles.
Right.
Like that, just from that perspective, what's it like having such kind of a big impact on that publisher? Because I mean, you have to have a big impact on it, right? Because I mean, there's not all of those titles that you get an entire wall of stuff from. Like each one matters. Like it carries weight for that line.
Oh yeah. When Heather, I had talked to Valiant a few different times over the years, back and forth. I was going to do some covers for them for a while, and then that didn't quite line up. And schedules are always a real pain in the ass with this stuff. That was a cool thing when Heather came and talked to me. She was like, we're asking you because we want you, and we're asking you because we believe in what you're doing and the light that you can shine on this character in this moment and really bring something important. And then she also said, hey, by the way, the truth of this is, and this is also something that Boom said, and I really loved, was we believe in creatives, and when we bring someone into the family, they are part of the family. And I feel like I am a strong B+ level creator, if we want to look at stuff like that. If we want to add grades to things, but they treat you like you are, John Hickman. They treat you like a rock star walking in. They value you and your work, and it really matters. And that's a great feeling. You're not one of many. You're not one of some. You're not drawing one of 150 titles that are on the shelf. You're drawing one of 12 titles that's out there, and it matters. Final Witness. We're working on this book, and it's interesting, and I think it's been marketed really well, and they're doing stuff like that. But I'll lay down this very, very small spoiler: the Valiant universe isn't going to be the same after this book.
Nice.
That's a big thing.
That's huge.
Very cool.
I mean, that line is just. I mean, all those characters are. It's been amazing to see how they've come to be and grown. Um, well, I know it's getting late. You have had a very long day putting on your own digital convention, which was again amazing. Dropping in to watch you talk to folks like Scotty and Mitch Garrett's was cool. But I would be remiss, and everybody who knows me would yell at me if number one I didn't at least bring up some sort of bourbon in this
Okay.
conversation because if nothing else, as much as I adore your writing, and by the way, I think you're selling yourself way short by calling yourself a B-lister. I don't think that's a fair assessment of yourself at all, and I'll say that as the fanboy.
I
But
love you, Caleb.
um, one of my favorite things, and about following you on social media and kind of being your friend, getting to hang out with you some at cons, is your love for the complexity and the craft of a solid cocktail. And as a matter of fact, my buddy David Price, I think you know him. He's from over at the 11 O'Clock Comics podcast. He wanted to know if you had made any new cocktails during this whole thing. But what are you drinking, and what makes the perfect old fashioned?
You want to know what's on my like literally on my table in front of me at this moment?
Yes,
Let's see. I've got three bourbons sitting in front of me.
my hero.
I've got Michter's Small Batch, their US one bourbon. Michter's is a Mitch and I each made an old fashioned using Michter's earlier.
Hmm.
It's a damn good bourbon. You know it's not like you're using Blanton's or something like that to make an old fashioned, but it's an incredibly solid, sippable whiskey, and it makes a great upscale old fashioned. Um, I've got a bottle of Buffalo Trace here.
Nice.
Buffalo Trace is, it's from that Blanton's family, but if you're talking about a well whiskey, like a Four Roses or something like that, Buffalo Trace is by far probably the best $26 bottle of bourbon you can get.
Hmm.
Love it. It's just it's great. I still drink Four Roses and stuff like that. I mean, in cocktails, but Buffalo Trace, I can pour a finger or two of that and be perfectly happy, or I can make a damn fine old fashioned with it. The other one I've got sitting here is Tomstown Pendergast Royal. I say it fancy, so I say Royale with cheese. But yeah, the Pendergast. Tomstown's a Kansas City distillery, and they make a really solid bourbon. This, for you get a lot of, I don't know, you get a lot of local whiskeys sometimes, and they're a little young.
Hmm.
They don't quite have that. They're kind of corn forward, and it tastes more like moonshine than proper bourbon. This though, Pendergast, I really love what they make there. And then I'm also sitting here with a bottle of Lefroy 10 because I love Scotch and peaty Scotch, and that needs to be nearby. So there you go.
Speaking my love language. Well, I want you to
Nice.
know, because this is a special occasion, at least, yeah, for all of us. It is. I broke out a bottle of Booker's that I had it was an anniversary present just for this. If I'm gonna talk to the mighty Han, I'm gonna drink a nice bourbon while I've
Which
got you on the phone.
so which edition is that?
This is the limited edition. Let's see. It's the Country Ham, if you know what that is.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, Booker's is a Kentucky whiskey. I want to say it's made by the Beam family, who make the Jim Beam and Knob Creek, or
Hmm.
some of uh, their other products. But this is it's a small batch whiskey. I think this is This has been aged 6 years, 4 months, and 2 days when they took it out of the barrel.
Nice.
Delicious, delicious flavor. Nice and oaky. Just stunning. The only way it could be better if we were all sitting at a table together.
Yeah, man. We need to, let's do a thing. Let's next chance we get after all this is said and done, let's sit down and have a nice glass of whiskey together. That'd be perfect.
Let's do that.
I think we've got to. Well, guys, do we have any more questions for Jeremy before we let him go get some shut eye?
No, let's let him get out of here.
Well, this is great.
We appreciate you coming on and just, spending the time talking with us. And
we're going to let you jump off here. Thanks so much again, man.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate y'all. And let's talk again soon, okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Bye.
Bye, man. All right. Well, I don't know about you guys. I think that was amazing.
That was a good time.
Yeah, that was great.
Just an easy conversation to have. A wealth of information, a wealth of product to talk about, but beyond that, just a really smart take on the industry and kind of the world we live in.
Yeah, and I promise next time I won't call him Jerry.
Hey, look, like you said, it's a former co-host. It's an easy Freudian slip. So, and it's funny you bring Jeremy up because it's Jerry up as I do the same thing. I actually think that Jerry is the person who first introduced me to Jeremy Haun.
Oh, nice.
At a convention. I'm not. I know I knew. I don't know that I'd met him before. I think Jerry is the one who was like, "Hey, I got a." I think he bought a commission from him, and
he did.
Took me up to his desk and was just like, "Hey, this is my friend Caleb," and I'm like, "Oh, you're Jeremy Haun. Hi."
I met Jeremy the first time at Comic Con way back when it was still in the library, 100%.
Oh, wow.
And
Nice.
had him do a Joker commission for me, and it was right after New 52 got started, and it was Joker without his face on.
That's rad.
Yeah, it's still one of my favorite con sketches I've ever had done.
I went back and was looking through his work, getting ready for the show. I had forgotten that he and Cullen Bunn did a book together before the demise of Vertigo. They worked on Wolfmoon.
Wow, I did not know that.
And I loved Wolfmoon. His art on Wolfmoon put that book way over the top. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's an extremely talented artist and writer.
It's a hell of a team. Well, I mean, I know from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of y'all's heart that we just really appreciate him jumping on. Like I said, he has been literally doing this all day from about 1 o'clock this afternoon, doing Hauncon, putting that on just for pure entertainment value. He works hard putting out the books that we are fortunate to get to read. Hopefully, fingers crossed, starting in about 2 weeks, those books are going to start hitting the shelves again. So as you heard in the conversation, we're going to be wrapping up the beauty. That's going to be kind of finishing itself out. Red Mother is going to continue to go on. His work at Valiant is about to blow Valiant wide open. And it's just, there's some really exciting stuff.
So every time somebody mentions the beauty, something that he does exceedingly well with that book is make covers that stand way out on the shelf. Mm-hmm. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I can't.
I have to pull my eyes away from that book anytime it's on the shelf. Those covers are nightmare fuel.
Yes.
Well, and it's that, like I said, it's that fashion oriented. There's something there.
Well, it's just it's a very simple haunting. It's very haunting. Those images on the covers of those comics. It's just like I don't know how it's something about those covers is amazing to me.
He should start his own publication company and call it the Haunting Publication.
those covers are just something else.
Trademarked, Jeremy.
You have to come back and go through us. Well, guys, I mean, I can keep going all night.
You can always edit this out, but I read something interesting. Another big retailer take on the whole DC distributor thing.
Oh, really?
So are you familiar with mycomicbookshop.com?
Yes.
So their owner made a statement about this, and so he is very much against DC using other distributors, and he has also said that he will not buy from anybody other than Diamond. And he goes on to say, if you read it carefully, basically what he goes on to say, without saying it, is that Diamond floats comic book stores credit like no other distributor ever has. And that's why so many shops only want to deal with Diamond, if for no other reason, that reason alone.
Well, they don't have an option. Diamond's the only distributor. They don't have, and yeah, I'm sure they do float credit. They're the only game in town. And if they don't have the comic shops, they don't have a business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as opposed to the old days where, comics were distributed via your local magazine distributor. And that's why they were in the same place that magazines were, in grocery stores and pharmacies and bookstores, and they're not there anymore because those distributors don't have access to them.
Right.
So I thought that was really interesting. That's something I had not heard before, is how at least nobody has spoken to the fact that Diamond, essentially, the way he put it is, acts like a bank to comic book stores.
Well, that's not where I thought you were going to go with that story. I thought it was about the not buying from their competitors.
No, he didn't touch on that. I mean, he did mention that, a comic book retailer also distributing is a blatant conflict of interest. He did mention that. That you could argue as an opinion, I suppose, but there's frankly no arguing if the stretching stores credit. That to me would explain why these stores are so passionate about Diamond, because I frankly, I know if Diamond's the only distributor, then that means the shops essentially have a chokehold on their local supply.
Mm-hmm.
Again, going back to what I said, is in the old days it wasn't the case. Now they essentially have a chokehold on the supply, but it goes a little deeper than that, and it's actually a very real financial motivation for Diamond to keep being their only source too.
Well, so comic shops work on a pretty thin margin. Like that's not a secret. And a lot of shops have a hard time. I mean, it's hard to make profit, especially when it comes to things being non-returnable. And again, that's Diamond who makes that rule for all of their products. I mean, yeah, they'll make things returnable for a little bit when certain publishers.
It's that, but Diamond makes that rule because the publishers make that rule.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, it's if the publishers would take returns, then Diamond would as well. I mean, you have to assume that anyway. I mean, that's the way it always been.
I don't know. I just have a hard time not wrapping my head around, but lending credit to the idea that my dealer will lend me credit when they're the only dealer in town. Yeah, of course they will. They're going to keep you coming back for more until they don't, and that's the only one you can go to. And that's also, I guess, hedging on the idea that these new companies won't extend a line of credit. And I don't know that anybody knows that for a fact. And I mean, and also that these companies are trying to do the long-term thing, and they weren't just doing DC a favor. I know, listening to other podcasts, our friends over at 11 O'Clock Comics who actually had the Merklers on, or one of the Merklers on, who own Discount Comic Book Service, who in turn put out one of these side companies that is going to be distributing. DC contacted them because they already have a national supply chain set up. Like they're literally the local comic shop to everybody who doesn't live in a city. To anybody who lives in a place that they can only do mail order, that's the LCS. so they already have this kind of national distribution chain set up, and DC contacted them and said, "Hey, Diamond's not holding up their end of the bargain right now. Do you think you can help us out? We want to get comics to comic shops that are still open." And they said yes, and they moved really fast, and they kind of flexed a little bit. But nobody's came out and said, "Yeah, this is a full time thing." It's and so I think that's still maybe expecting the worst or coming up with excuses. Again, I'm gonna quote Jason Wood because he was on the phone with the folks, but it's insane and somewhat selfish, and I think a little bit of bullshit to have been bemoaning the monopoly for decades now. Because Diamond, and everybody will admit it, Diamond's got its own fair share of problems, and yes, everybody goes to them because they have to. But I've never heard a community or an industry load the chokehold that a company has on them for as long as the comics industry has Diamond, and then as soon as there is an opportunity for something else, to take 4 steps back and be like, "No, JK, we're just kidding. We love these guys that are the only dealer in town." It just I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it is a slim margin for a very niche industry that is incredibly terrified of change. But that's just me. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, well, I can only assume there's several reasons. I just thought it was really interesting. Nobody's made the point about the credit thing. I just thought that was interesting. That's the first time that ever been brought up.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like I said, razor thin margins.
I think that a lot of people are hesitant, and because the same thing happened to my industry. One of the plate manufacturers decided that they were no longer going to support smaller plants. And so what they did is they went to the bigger plants and said, "Okay, you can now sell plates to these smaller plants, and we'll give you a discount on them to sell to them." So now you had truss plants buying plates from other truss plants that they were in direct competition with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a similar thing. It doesn't sit real well with those smaller companies. So I think what DC was trying to do versus how they went about doing it, and I understand why they chose what they did, because the companies they did, because they needed to potentially do this quickly. But it's not going to ever sit real well with a small business to have to buy something from a larger competitor, even if it's not a direct competitor.
Right.
It's still a competitor.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's some level of hubris. And I say this as somebody who doesn't own a business, and I want to completely predicate that. All of this is me on the outside looking in, but I struggle to see how a company like Midtown Comics, as far as their national shipping organization, which is a little bit separate from their 2 spots in Manhattan or Long Island or wherever they're at. I live in Arkansas. It's like their national shipping chain is separate, and DCBS, which doesn't have a brick and mortar store, which again ships to anybody and everybody. I think there's some hubris in these small local shops that are very localized, thinking that they're a competitor.
It's not that they're a competitor to them. It's that the other businesses, the larger ones, are competition to the smaller ones. They don't feel like they are in competition or that they are going to put a dent in those larger companies. It's the other way around.
Well, yeah, that the larger companies are going to find, they're going to be able to offer a lot more discounts, and DCBS can, they offer on new books and stuff a 40% discount, 50% discount, but
right.
that limits over, that's not on every book they have, and yeah, so I think that so full disclosure, I was talking to our local comic shop owner Matt Dykes about this the other day, and one of the things I said to him is, that's true, they can offer discounts and stuff that you can't, but you offer an entire thing that they have the inability to do so, and that's a community. And like
Right.
on some level, you have to figure out how to offer those, like play to your strengths. Like you can't just advertise to the people who walk in your front door. They're already there. You have to figure out how to go hit up the local communities. And look, like there's a Barnes and Noble right down the street from them in Little Rock that sells a ton of comics. And I
Right,
had no idea.
but he's not being asked to buy his comics from Barnes and Noble to turn
Right.
around and sell at his plant.
Well,
at his store.
And I think that their fear is a legitimate one, that, you know, when we're living in the Netflix era and the Amazon Prime era,
Mm-hmm.
that an online retailer can put a brick and mortar retailer out of business because it's happening.
They absolutely can, and I understand that fear, but again, I think you also still have to look at the actual the semantics and details of it. Like you have the ability, at least in this case, because it is a niche community selling a niche object, you have the ability to compete by offering something that an online retailer of comics can't. And at least Kapow and our local comic shops, they do a really good job of that. They do offer a community, and there are people. I mean, I drive by 3 other stores every week to go to that particular one because of what they offer and the environment that they create. And I think there are a lot of people who still look for that. But on the other side of that fact, though, this is not. Yes, it is owned by the same people. It's owned by Midtown and DCBS, but they're side companies. Like these are other corporations. They are being incorporated. Papers are being filed in a Secretary of State's office.
Yes.
It is a completely different entity with completely different. Like
it is not. It only separated by those laws. So if you are, in my industry, for instance, as we talked about, the companies, the larger plate company or the larger truss manufacturers selling plates to the smaller truss manufacturers, they're not buying them from that truss plant. They're buying them from a company owned by the same people as that truss plant. And they're still buying them and putting money in their competitors' pockets.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a different company.
And it's not that you're either right or you're wrong about the community thing, Caleb. It's that, you know, that will never be big enough in and of itself to support the business the way it needs to from a pure retail standpoint. So you're just never going to have that many people that are going to be that vested in the quote community to protect your interests in the world we're living in today, on an online retailer world. Otherwise we'd have these video rental stores because people love going in, walking the aisles just like they do comic book stores, talking about movies, talking to the, you know, I mean, we all used to rent video. I figure we all do the same thing. You go in, you talk to the guy, what's out, what's new, what's good.
What's good. Yeah.
You know.
And it's not that you're wrong, Caleb. It's just that you're not right. No, I'm kidding.
No. I completely get the fears that are there, but I also, I mean, what's the flip side of that? You either don't have new product and you continue to only buy stuff from somebody who, oh, by the way, Diamond used to be a retailer, and Diamond also owns a chokehold in all of these like discount services that they have to. Also, Diamond is the one that supplies DCBS. Like
so the part that we're missing out here on and what actually happened, as soon as DC announced this, Diamond said, okay, we're going to start shipping books again.
Yeah, because Diamond didn't have to stop. And that's because they monopolize the industry. They can dictate the terms of what they do and don't do. And sometimes that means extending a fair amount of credit to a store that's never going to catch up, which I also don't know that that's a good business practice or actually healthy for the store.
So if you own a small business and the choice is to buy books from quote unquote a competitor or to wait 2 weeks to put the new books on your shelf, you're never going to buy from the competitor.
I mean, I think some people would because they are looking at the bigger picture, maybe. And again, maybe those people are hedging on the fact that it could be a solid and continuous thing and not just a immediate right now. But again, at the time that these other companies like made this announcement and stuff, Diamond wasn't shipping, and so the threat of honestly, I think this was kind of a jump start to the get those things flowing again. As soon as the hint of competition to the monopolization of the comics industry, or at least the direct market side of the industry, showed up, Diamond went back to work. Like they're going to be moving again. And,
Right.
and who knows? Who knows? I think that the emergence, at the end of the day, I think the emergence of another distributor, especially one that is well run, and maybe they're competitors, maybe they're not. I can't make that decision, but I do know that the Merklers run a really good business, and they are incredibly smart business people. She's also the president of the I can completely blank, the comic book legal defense fund.
Legal
CLB,
Defense
yeah.
Fund, yeah.
She's the president of CLBDF. Like they love comics and they love the comics industry, and they have some really smart ideas about ways to make it better that I think are going to be for right or wrong, going to be ignored by people who do see them as competitors. I think there's a legitimate reason to see them as a competitor. I also think that you're a person who's getting things that I'm not, and I'm mad about it, way to think of them as a competitor, which I think is ridiculous. Like, I think that's just, it's saying you stole my customers. Well, the people that they're selling to were never your customers. And the few that were, fuck them. Either you do what you have to do to keep that people. I mean, they're consumers. I mean, we live in a free market society, right? They're consumers who decided that, again, kind of what Matt said, that what you were offering did not equate to the 40% savings of their wallet. And that's, for a consumer, that you're buying a $4 book, maybe that's a valid thing. For me, it's not. For you, it's not. For Matt, it's not. But for a lot of people, it is. But again, so I mean, I think the threshold and the margins there are few and far between. I as far as like localized taking of quote unquote customers go, I think Barnes and Noble probably steals way more than people buying graphic novels and manga and comics than what a company like Midtown or DCBS does from the local comic shop. I think they're way more of a threat locally than what those other organizations are.
Right, but they're not. But he's not being asked to buy his comics from Barnes and Noble.
No, that's true. But if Barnes and Noble's parent company, who's not a local comic shop, popped up and decided to launch a distribution company to rival Diamond, I don't think you would see the blowback because they're not a quote unquote comic shop. So these small companies, all of your small comic shops also tap into selling used toys and stuff. They buy, sell, and work with eBay. Who has way bigger margins and takes way more of a customer base than what Discount Comic Book Service does. And eBay, I think, has put more mom and pop businesses down than a lot. I won't say that they've done more than Amazon, because I think Amazon is the legion of evil. But I think if Amazon popped out and said, "Hey, we're gonna tap into the direct market," I don't think you'd see the blowback because they're not the quote unquote enemy. They're not the quote unquote.
Shit. Oh,
yeah,
man,
they
I disagree
are.
with that.
I disagree completely.
Yeah, hugely with that. How many bookstores have Amazon put out of business? So a comic book, they decided they wanted
and
to
comic
start
book stores. Yeah,
Yeah,
You don't think Amazon would be able to extend a discount and credit more so than what Diamond can?
No, I'm not saying that they wouldn't. But I mean, if if I understood you correctly, you said that if Amazon announced they're going to start distributing comics, that comic book stores would not. Yeah.
If Amazon announced that they had a distribution chain and that they were going to be a direct competitor to
Well,
Diamond,
now that's complete and total fantasy, because they would just sell comic books. They wouldn't go into distribution. That's not their business.
That's true. Yeah. But I mean, you get what I'm saying though. Like, I think that because it was already set in comic shop owners' minds that Midtown, and more so I think DCBS, is the quote unquote enemy, that they will bend over backwards and find reasons to not follow a new thing because they're really afraid of something.
I think it's a legit fear.
Yeah, it is a legit fear, and it's all those, it's this online world we're living in, and all the things they've seen be put to death by it. I mean, it just seems like if you're not afraid, then you haven't been paying attention for the past 15 years.
Okay, but I mean,
I understand why DC chose the path they did. It was the quickest way to make it happen.
mm-hmm.
But as another retailer, as a small business owner, there's no way I would ever buy my product from a different competitor to sell. Whether you see them as a competitor or not, they are.
They're a competitor. Any source is a competitive source.
That's like saying you're not going to buy from Diamond because Diamond sends to your direct competitors, though. Diamond.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. It's even worse because they've got a chokehold on it.
No, not at all. Not even close, actually.
It's not even close to the same thing.
Oh, it's more than close.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
How's it
no
not?
way, shape, or form.
How's it? Because like you just said, Diamond can lend credit to different people, and they don't have to let that information be sold. So Diamond can give Kapow over here one line of credit and one price on things. They can go and give Tierney, who owns 2 other comic shops in the area, a better discount, and they're selling the same product to 2 people, and they're pitting them against each other, and there's no other outlet. Like, that's worse.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's absolutely worse.
It's not worse than buying from your competitor.
No.
Again, I still think you're crazy if you consider the company, the organization that ships books to largely
again,
rural areas.
no one's arguing whether Diamond is a solid company or not, or that they have good business practices.
I'm not arguing that. I'm saying that if you think DCBS, who is, I think, the number 2 buyer from Diamond, who ships largely to places and has a major customer base to people who are not in populated areas as a competitor to the brick and mortar store in your local neighborhood, Walmart.
Exactly how Netflix got started.
Yeah, it's exact.
Semantics. I think it's ridiculous. But no, I get it. I get the fear.
You're still putting money in your competition.
You're terrified that one rich person who doesn't care about you is going to make money off of somebody else who's a rich person who doesn't care about you. I get it. You'd rather go, like the companies would rather go with a monopoly of somebody who also.
No, that's not at all. They would rather.
Exactly what it is.
Every one of them would take another form if it wasn't their competitor. The fact that DC chose companies that are in direct competition to these small businesses was the problem.
That's what they think the problem is. That's again, we're talking about a mindset. That's it's the most logical choice. They've already got a national distribution chain set up. They've already
it's the most national trade. Why don't I just give them my account?
Well, and it's but the thing is it's not that he's dealing with the devil that he knows. He knows Diamond's system. He knows how to make his business operate with Diamond's system. So if he's got to all of a sudden start buying some of his books from another source, and that system is not part of his business, that's going to throw off his whole business model.
It will be incredibly hard for people who are only used to using the Diamond portal to shift and to go to another distributor.
That's because that's the only portal that exists. So right. You say the only people, that's all people.
Yeah. No, that's a fair and valid point.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I don't like the Diamond system because it limits access.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
But I completely understand how the shops would prefer the Diamond system because it limits access to their interests, but it's also the devil they know.
And I think that's exactly it. They're afraid of change.
And and having one vendor as a business, makes your job much, much easier.
Yeah, no one's going to buy from multiple vendors if they can buy from one. That doesn't mean that there should only be one vendor out there, though.
Yeah,
there should be multiple vendors out there for them to choose from.
Well, usually, and again, if you go back, there used to be regional distributors.
Right.
It's kind of like the soft drink industry. There's regional distributors for Coke and regional distributors for Pepsi and Budweiser. It's just not like that. And that's the way it used to be with periodicals.
Well, and that's the way, honestly, that's the way that they were setting this up as, though, right? Like, so your Lunar was going to be, I think, East Coast, and your Sea something S was going to be West Coast, and so they were setting up to be that way for these particular books. So they were trying to get it back to a, is it still a monopolization? Yeah, in the same way that you can have Dish or you can have DirecTV, if that's even still a thing. I've been off that for years. But in some areas you can only get one or the other. You can get Entergy or you can get whatever else. For you've got quote unquote options for your services, but you don't. So and that's kind of what we're getting back to. So
I don't like it at all, but I can totally understand how the shops would prefer it. It's just because of, especially today.
I think all of them would prefer a second distributor that wasn't owned by a comic company, by a comic shop.
I will say the one excuse that I've heard that actually has, like, for me personally has merit and that makes some type of sense is the fear that like Midtown and DCBS could get access to customer lists. Now that, yeah, sure. And I would want that contract that says, hey, like Lunar can't give DCBS this list. Like you have to, like, I would want it contractually obligated that didn't happen to those.
So because corporations in large, companies are always going to follow those contracts and never share
hey,
it.
Look, lawyers.
They're absolutely going to share it, dude.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that.
Regardless if there's a contract or not, that information's getting shared. I completely understand why a small business would not want to interact with somebody that's selling over the internet to potential, whether they're reaching those clients or not, to potential clients in their area.
Sure.
We're just going to have to agree to disagree on this.
I think if they were worried about reaching potential clients, they'd put in some, and anyway, some effort into not making the publishers be what brings their customers in. And a lot of shops do that. A lot of shops do. A lot of shops owners put in hard work to go reach out and get new people. A lot don't. Well, as we have been doing the past few weeks, close this thing out kind of the same way. Because we don't have new comics right now, like and it sucks. Especially, I think it sucks more so for people whose local comic shop is just completely closed. We're all fortunate enough to be in a state that hasn't had to happen as of yet, and we've been able to buy back issues and trades and graphic novels and collections that maybe were sitting on the back burner because so much of that budget was eaten up by new comics. And we're getting to revisit some stuff that we've already owned that we just haven't had a chance to read or maybe haven't read in a long time. And so what we've been kind of doing, if you've listened to the past few episodes, we have been telling folks something to go back and read. Instead of New Comic Book Wednesday, it's what are you reading Wednesday? I'll kick us off as I have in the past. I think if you get a chance, and you can order it off Amazon, or maybe you own it, maybe your local comic shop is able to get you back issues, you should 1017, I don't know why I picked that number, I just did, pick up Luther Strode, the complete series, by none other than our brother in arms, our buddy, Justin Jordan, drawn by the great Tradmore, with colors by Felipe Sobrero. If you remember reading those old comics, as you would flip open and there'd be that page for, like, I don't know, Acme thing or whatever, but it was a program that, if you were a skinny kid, you were tired of getting sand kicked in your face, you were tired of getting your butt kicked by the muscle-bound boy at the beach, stealing your girl and whatnot.
That would be the Charles Atlas. That would be the Charles Atlas advertisements, young guy.
That's it.
Yes.
See, I need you old heads for that because I'm the baby. Yeah. I don't remember what that was like because I'm a child of the 90s.
Oh God.
What Justin and Trad and Felipe did is they took that and they fleshed it out and they made it in a story that was essentially 3 parts. It was incredible. It's this young kid named Luther Strode who joins one of those programs, and it turns him into an indomitable force. And obviously with that comes the attention of folks that might have some unsavory plans and some clandestine organization, and a young girl who is big on heart and short on patience for bullshit. And it's it's a completely amazing story, and if you can get your hands on it, if you don't already own it, you would do well to pick this up.
It's funny you talk about that book. I was actually looking at it on my shelf earlier today, thinking about pulling it down and giving it a reread.
Nice.
Yeah. So the book I'm going to recommend is Notes on a Case of Melancholia or A Little Death by Nicholas Gurwitch. This is absolutely a beautifully drawn, stunning book. Lots of Bernie Wrightson-esque type drawings in it. And it's basically the Grim Reaper is seeing a psychiatrist because his child will not kill anything. And it's a silent book. There's no words in it. It's just absolutely beautifully drawn and illustrated, and lots of detail, and just like I said, absolutely beautiful.
Well,
Check it out.
I'm going to go back and I'm going to revisit, as I have been doing, another book from the 1990s.
Witchblade #1?
This is actually, I'm going to pull my eyes away from Witchblade #1, as hard as that is, and I'm going to direct them towards Volume 2 of Rob Liefeld's Prophet. Mr. Chuck Dixon came in to take over the writing, and the art was done by one Stephen Platt. Now, the reason this is a standout is because allegedly Stephen Platt was paid $40,000 an issue when this book was coming out. So
Jesus.
Let's go. I'm going to, and I was very enthusiastic about Stephen Platt's art at the time because it was 90s to the 90s, baby. And just completely disproportionate muscle-bound figures, lots of lines. I don't know if you want to call it detail or not, but lots of lines, a lot of action. And the cover of #4 was so amazing to me as a teenager. I found a poster of it, and I had that poster on my wall all through college. And I have no idea where I got that poster.
Is this the one that you laugh about every time you walk in and you see it in the key book section at the comic book shop?
No, it's not. It's actually not.
Okay.
Yeah. The gold, I know you're talking about the $20
the gold foil.
gold foil edition Prophet #1 that our local LCS, and it's still there.
Is it? That's surprising.
It'll probably still be there for a minute.
So
yeah.
I'll say, when Chuck Dixon is on, he's on. When he's not, he's not. But when he is on, he's good.
Well, he was on for a few decades, once upon a time. But once upon a time.
So, speaking of on the topic of 90s kind of topics, 90s titles like Witchblade, you could, if you wanted to, and you might. Maybe you should, if you wanted to, go back and check out Jeremy Haun's work on the Darkness that he did there for a little bit, because it was good stuff. Or if you wanted to go back and check out his DC work, you could go back and check out his work on Batwoman, which was rad. Or you could go check out any of the volumes of The Beauty that were out, or any of the volumes of The Realm that are out. Check out the first couple of issues of Red Mother. The man has just got a long catalog of some amazing stuff that needs to be read. Needs to. It's begging to, because it's amazing. And it's incredible comics. So let that be the fourth thing. And, just because I'm anal retentive and I needed that on my graphic. So I've got so much editing to do on this bullshit.
Yeah.
I think you should leave it in exactly the way it is.
All you have to do, Caleb, is edit out your part.
Yeah, but then it'll just be a lot of wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want it to just be all wrong.
Oh man,
This isn't the all wrong podcast.
You can just leave it in exactly the way it is.
yeah.
I'll splice it up and make it pretty.
Yeah.
How many tumblers of that bourbon have you had, by the way?
Believe it or not, I've had 2 glasses about 2 fingers.
Yeah, tell it to a cop.
No, I can send a picture of it right now. I'm in my own home.
It's always 2 drinks, isn't it, Craig? It's always just 2. Only had
Always 2 fingers, 2 drinks.
Tangentially.
Or directly, it doesn't matter.
Oh, you silly boys. Well, do we have any asshole?
Let's go forth and love some comics.
Yeah, let's do that. Go forth and love some comics. Give me a woohoo, Craig. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you guys.